Hi everybody and welcome back. I hope you are ready, because today's story is one of the most gut-wrenching, jaw-dropping betrayals we have ever covered on this channel. We are talking about a woman who spent 14 months planning her dream wedding, 14 months of deposits, of tastings, of dress fittings and seating charts and late nights on Pinterest. She did everything right. She was the perfect partner. And then, 3 weeks before the wedding, her fiancé pulled the rug out from under her. Not because he fell out of love, not because of anything she did, but because mommy and daddy told him to. Let that sink in. This one broke me. Let's get into it. So our narrator, let's call her Mara, is a 29-year-old woman living in Chicago. She works as a dental hygienist. She has her own apartment. She pays her own bills. She is, by every definition, a fully functioning, independent adult human being. Her fiancé, let's call him Carter, is 31. He works at his family's commercial real estate firm, has done since he graduated college. The firm is run by his father, Gerald, and his mother, Diane, sits on the board. It is a family business in every sense of the word. Carter grew up, comfortable, private schools, country club summers, the works. Mara grew up solidly middle class. Her dad was a postal worker. Her mom was a school secretary. They were not wealthy, but they were loving and they were proud. Mara and Carter met at a friend's birthday party 3 years ago. She says the connection was instant. He was charming and funny and genuinely warm. He was not flashy about the money. He never made her feel lesser, or so she thought. They dated for almost 2 years before he proposed. He got down on one knee at the restaurant where they had their first date. He had the whole thing planned. The ring was beautiful. Her friends cried. She cried. Carter cried. It was the kind of proposal you screenshot and send to your group chat at midnight. And from that moment on, they dove headfirst into wedding planning. They set the date for a Saturday in early June. The venue was a stunning restored barn outside the city. Exposed beams, string lights, the whole fairy tale. They booked a caterer. They hired a photographer who did absolutely gorgeous editorial style work. Mara found her dress on the third try, a fitted lace gown with a low back. She says she knew it was the one the second she put it on. Carter's groomsmen were set. Her bridesmaids were set. 214 guests were invited. Deposits totaling over $18,000 had been paid. Everything was in motion. Everything was perfect, or so she thought. The first sign came about 6 weeks before the wedding. Mara almost missed it entirely. She almost filed it away as nothing. If only she had paid closer attention in that moment. She had no idea what was already being put in motion behind her back. Carter came home from dinner with his parents, a dinner Mara did not attend because she had a work event, and he was quiet. She asked how it went. He said fine. She asked what they talked about. He shrugged and said nothing much. She let it go. People have off nights. People have weird family dinners. That was just Tuesday. But then it happened again the following weekend. Another dinner with his parents. Another version of Carter she did not recognize on the drive home. He was distant, clipped. He answered her questions with one word. She asked if everything was okay with the wedding planning. He said yes. She asked if something was wrong with work. He said no. She asked if she had done something. He said no. And then he went to bed at 9:30 on a Saturday without another word. Mara told her best friend, Jade, about it. Jade said it sounded like cold feet. Normal groom stuff, pre-wedding jitters. Mara wanted to believe that. She tried to believe that. But then came the comments. They started small. Mara would mention something about the wedding, the menu, the floral arrangements, and Carter would make this little noise, a sound somewhere between a sigh and a scoff. She would ask what the noise meant. He would say nothing. She would push. And finally, one evening while they were going over the seating chart, he said it out loud for the first time. My mom thinks your cousin Rachel shouldn't be seated near the head table. Mara blinked. Why? She just thinks it might look a certain way. Look what way, Carter? He didn't answer. He just went back to staring at the chart. Mara let it go, but it sat in her stomach like a stone. Then came the comment about her dress. They were at his parents' house for Sunday lunch, one of the rare occasions Mara attended, and Diane made a comment about how she had always imagined a more traditional silhouette for Carter's bride. Not a criticism, she said, just a thought. She smiled when she said it. The kind of smile that is specifically designed to make you feel insane for being offended. Carter said nothing. Mara smiled back, and then spent the entire drive home wondering if she should have said something. She should have said something. Because after the dress comment came the career comment. Diane, again, over coffee one afternoon, said she hoped Mara planned to transition out of hygiene work eventually. That a dentist's office wasn't exactly the environment one expected for, quote, a partner in a family like ours. Mara laughed politely. She nodded. She made some vague comment about keeping her options open, and then she called Jade the second she got outside and said, Jade, I need you to tell me I'm not crazy. She was not crazy. The comments kept coming. Her family's house was too small for a rehearsal dinner. Her father's speech was going to be too casual. Her bridesmaids' dresses were, according to Diane, not quite the right shade for the venue's aesthetic. Each comment delivered with that same dagger wrapped in silk smile. Each time, Carter sat nearby and said absolutely no thing. And then came the week that everything broke open. It started on a Monday. Carter had been distant for days. Mara kept asking what was wrong. He kept deflecting. She pushed harder. And finally, he erupted. Not in a screaming match. That would have been too obvious. Carter erupted in a cold, quiet way that was somehow worse. He said her family was embarrassing him. That was the phrase, embarrassing him. Not that he was embarrassed of them. He framed it like a fact about them. Like it was something they were doing deliberately to him. He said his parents had concerns about the optics of the wedding. He used the word optics about a wedding. He said that people in his circle would judge the venue as too casual. He said her father's job history wasn't the kind of background that reflected well on the family business. He said, Dan, this is the part that made Mara's ears ring, that maybe they had moved too fast. Too fast. After 3 years and $18,000 in deposits, Mara stared at him. She asked him plainly, Are you repeating what your parents said to you? He denied it immediately. Said these were his own feelings, his own concerns, but they did not sound like Ike's own words. They sounded scripted. They sounded rehearsed. They sounded like Diane. She did not sleep that night. She lay there in the dark, replaying every recent conversation, every clipped response, every weird Sunday dinner. And a thought started forming. A thought she did not want to let in, but it was there, growing louder. He's going to cancel this wedding. She told herself she was being irrational. She told herself she was catastrophizing. But she had been in that apartment for 2 years. She knew this man, or she thought she did. And something had fundamentally changed in the last 6 weeks. The timing was too specific. The language was too borrowed. The sudden distance was too deliberate. She needed to know the truth. And she was about to find it in the worst possible way. It was a Thursday evening. Carter was at the gym. Mara was home. She was not snooping. Let me be clear about that. She was looking for the shared wedding planning folder on the laptop they both used. They had a shared folder where they kept all the vendor contracts, invoices, and correspondence. She opened the laptop. She opened the browser, and the email tab that was already open, not her email. His email was sitting right there. She was about to close it. She really was. And then she saw the subject line of the message at the top of his inbox. Regarding the wedding situation, final decision. Her hands went cold. She knew she shouldn't open it. She knew what opening it would mean. But she also knew, in that moment, with total bone-deep certainty, that her life was about to change regardless of what she did next. So she opened it. It was a thread between Carter and his father, Gerald. It had been going on for 4 weeks, of back and forth that she had known nothing about. She read it from the bottom up. Gerald's first message was direct and clinical. He said the family had discussed the marriage at length. He said Mara was not the right fit for the family's future. He listed reasons: her career trajectory, her family's financial standing, her background. He called it a mismatch of social capital. He said Carter's marriage had implications for the business, for partnerships, for the family's standing in certain professional circles. He said he expected Carter to handle it. Carter had responded that he loved Mara and wasn't willing to end things. He sounded strong. Gee, in that first response, he actually sounded like himself. She almost cried reading it. But Gerald had replied again, longer this time. He laid out exactly what would happen if Carter married Mara against their wishes. He would be removed from his position at the firm. His ownership stake, which was set to transfer to him at age 35, would be revoked. He would be written out of the family trust. Gerald used the phrase, "You will have made your choice." and we will have made ours. And then Diane had been added to the thread. She wrote 3 paragraphs about legacy, about what they had sacrificed to build the family they had, about how a mother knows what is best, about how Carter had always been emotional and impulsive, and that Mara was, quote, a sweet girl but simply not built for this world. Not built for this world. And at the very top of the thread, Carter's final response, sent 2 days ago. I'll take care of it. 4 words, that was all. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I read it again and again. And a third time, like the words might rearrange themselves into something that didn't mean what they clearly meant. They didn't rearrange. I'll take care of it. I was the it. I was the problem that needed handling. 3 years, a proposal, 14 months of planning, an $18,000 wedding deposit, and I was it. I closed the laptop. I sat on the couch. I did not cry. Not yet. I was too numb to cry. I sat there in complete silence for 45 minutes until I heard his key in the door. He came in from the gym in a good mood. He was cheerful. He called out her name when he came in. She answered from the couch. He came around the corner, looked at her face, and stopped. What's wrong? He said. She looked at him for a long moment. Tell me about the wedding situation, she said. She watched the color leave his face. That confirmed everything. He tried. He genuinely tried to compose himself. He asked what she meant. She asked him not to make her say it again. He sat down across from her. He looked at the floor, and slowly, painfully, in broken fragments, the truth came out. His parents had been pressuring him for months. Before the pressure became explicit threats, it had been constant, sustained commentary about her family, about her job, about the wedding they were planning. He had tried to push back. He had tried. But when his father put the ultimatum in writing the business, the trust, the stake, he panicked. He was scared. He said he didn't know what to do. She asked him why he didn't tell her. Why did he let her keep planning, keep paying vendors, keep fitting her dress for 6 weeks, while he had already been told to end it? He said he wasn't ready. She asked if he was ready now. He couldn't answer. She asked directly, "Are you canceling the wedding?" He looked at his hands, and then he looked at her, and he said, "I don't see another way." That was the moment. That was the full stop. That was the period at the end of 3 years. She stood up. She was remarkable. She did not scream. She did not throw anything. She looked at him for one long final moment, and she said, "Okay, then I need you to go." He started to protest. She said it again, quietly, without drama. "Please go." He grabbed his gym bag still in his hand and he left. She sat back down, and then she cried. She cried for 2 hours straight, alone on that couch. For the wedding, for the dress, for the barn with the string lights, for the future she had believed in completely. And then she stopped, crying, and she started thinking, okay, I need to take a moment here because I have been sitting with this story for hours, and I am not okay. I am just not okay, Mara. My love, you planned this wedding. You trusted this man. You were not a problem to be handled. You were a person, and he chose a trust fund over you. He chose an inheritance over you. He looked you in the eye after 6 weeks of secret emails and said, I don't see another way. Not I choose you. Not they can keep their money. Not nothing they own is worth losing you. He chose correctly by his own calculation. And that calculation is the most devastating thing about this entire story, because here is what gets me most. Carter was not a bad person at the start of this story. He pushed back in those early emails. He tried for a moment to stand his ground. But when the money got specific, when Gerald put numbers and clauses and trust accounts on the table, Carter folded. He folded because he had never actually been tested before. He had never been asked to stand up for something that cost him something real. And when the moment came, he discovered he wasn't who he thought he was. And that is the most heartbreaking thing of all. Now let's see what the community had to say about this, because the responses to this post were absolutely electric. The top comment, which got over 34,000 upvotes, was from a user called Real Talk Rachel, and she wrote, "The fact that he was actively letting her continue planning and spending money while he already knew he was going to cancel, that is but cold feet. That is cowardice with a price tag. He didn't tell her because he wanted to keep his options open. He was hoping something would change so he wouldn't have to make the hard choice. She deserved to know the moment that first email landed in his inbox, and I have to agree. That is the part that turns this from heartbreak into betrayal. It stopped being a private struggle the moment he let her keep spending money. Every vendor call she made after he received that ultimatum was a lie by omission. Every dress fitting, every menu tasting, every invitation she addressed by hand. He let all of that happen, and he said nothing. Second comment from Practical Pegasus said, his parents are villains, obviously, but let's not let Carter off the hook by making him pee. You're a victim. He is a 31-year-old man. He could have come to Mara immediately and said, here is the situation, let's figure this out together. He chose secrecy. He chose to manage her instead of partner with her. That is a fundamental character flaw. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Carter's parents are awful. Diane is a masterclass in passive-aggressive cruelty, but Carter had choices at every single step. He chose, repeatedly, to protect himself over being honest with the woman he claimed to love. Third comment, from Divorce Anonymous _throwaway, and this one is long but worth it, wrote, I was in a similar position 10 years ago. Different circumstances but same family dynamic. My ex-husband came from old money and his family never accepted me. We got married anyway against their wishes, and I thought love would be enough. It wasn't. He resented me for the rift with his family within 18 months of the wedding. We were divorced by year 3. Sometimes the family wins not because they're right, but because the partner was never truly on your side to begin with. Mara, leaving now is the kindest thing that ever happened to you. You just can't see it yet. That comment hit me. It gets naturally hit me. Because there is a version of this story where Mara fights for Carter, where she begs him to stay, where he stays. And 6 months later, he resents her for costing him his inheritance, and she spends years trying to prove herself to people who will never be satisfied. Leaving even in this devastating way may have saved her from a decade of pain. Fourth comment, from Go Math Expert, which is a hilarious username for such a sharp observation. Did anyone notice, she says, the deposits totaled over $18,000? And his family is threatening him over a business inheritance worth presumably millions? They torpedoed their son's relationship and cost his fiancé thousands of dollars to protect a portfolio. The priorities of wealthy families are genuinely a different planet. Exactly. The financial cruelty of this situation is something people gloss over. Mara is out thousands of dollars, the venue deposit, the photographer, the caterer, the dress that cannot be returned. These are not small amounts for someone on a dental hygienist's salary. She didn't just lose a fiancé. She lost money she worked hard to save. While his parents were protecting assets, Hat could absorb $18,000 without blinking. Fifth comment, from Uncle Sam Was Wrong, wrote simply, the words "I'll take care of it" have never sounded more sinister. He treated the woman he was supposed to marry like a client complaint. Disgusting. Sixth comment, from Bridezilla Defense League, and this one made me actually laugh out loud, wrote, if I were Mara, every single one of those vendors would be receiving a forwarded copy of that email chain by morning. Let the caterer know why the wedding was cancelled. Let the photographer number done. Let Diane's name be attached to every refusal request. Make the truth the paperwork. And finally, comment 7 from Quiet Lioness Energy. She said she didn't cry until he left. She held it together long enough to send him away with dignity. That is not weakness. That is a woman who already knew, somewhere deep down, that she was going to survive this. Mara absolutely survived this. And now, let's talk about how, well, the community has spoken, and they are unanimous. Mara is absolutely not the villain of this story. Carter and his parents share that honor equally. But guys, I need you to stay right here, because what happened next, what Mara did in the days following that conversation, is so unbelievably satisfying that I almost cannot believe it is real. Let's get into the update. Let's see how this ends. The first thing Mara did the morning after Carter left, the very first thing, was called the Honeymoon Resort. They had booked a 10-night stay at an all-inclusive resort in St. Lucia. Carter had paid for it in full, his choice, his insistence. It was non-refundable. She had not paid $1 toward it. She called the resort. She explained she would be traveling solo, or rather, with a friend, and asked if the booking could be transferred to a single name. They said yes. The reservation was in her name. She hung up the phone and she texted Jade. "How's your June looking?" Jade replied within 40 seconds. "I am so in. That was step 1. St. Lucia was secured. Step 2 took a little more courage." But Mara had courage to spare now. She called Carter's mother. Diane picked up on the second ring. Her voice was smooth and practiced. She said, "Hello, dear." And Mara said very calmly, very clearly, "I know about the emails, Diane. I know about the ultimatum. I know about the trust and the business take. I know everything. And I want you to know that I know. And I want you to know I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too." There was a long pause on Diane's end, and then Diane started to say something that probably would have been cruel and articulate, and Mara hung up before she could finish. She then called her own mother. She told her everything. Her mom cried. Her dad, who was on the same call, did not cry. He was quiet for a very long moment, and then he said, "That family never deserved you, sweetheart." Mara cried again, but differently. These were tears that were leaving, not arriving. Then Mara made the decision that would define the entire fallout. She wrote an email. She addressed it to both families, simultaneously Carter's parents, her own parents, her maid of honor, Carter's 2 closest groomsmen, and the mutual friends who had been invited to the wedding. She did not write it in anger. She wrote it in the calm, clear voice of a woman who had absolutely nothing left to lose. She explained that the wedding was cancelled. She explained why. She included, with full context, the summary of what the email chain between Carter and his father had contained. She did not forward the actual emails. She was not stupid, and she was not trying to get sued. She summarized it factually. Gerald had issued an ultimatum. Carter had agreed to comply. The wedding had been cancelled not because of anything wrong with their relationship, but because Carter's parents had threatened to disinherit him if he married a woman they deemed socially beneath their family. She ended the email with one sentence. "I thought everyone deserved to know the real reason." She hit send, and then she went to get a coffee, because she had done enough for one morning. The fallout was immediate and biblical. On Carter's side, the groomsmen were furious. 2 of them, guys who had known Carter since college, texted him directly and said they wanted nothing to do with him. One of them apparently had suspected the family pressure dynamic for years and was not remotely surprised, but was absolutely disgusted. Carter tried to call both of them. Neither picked up. On the family business side, word spread in Carter and Gerald's professional circle. A few of Gerald's business associates, people who valued the appearance of respectability more than almost anything heard a version of the story. The version they heard was not flattering to Gerald. Manipulating your adult son's personal life to protect a real estate portfolio is not, it turns out, a great look in any social circle. Diane called Mara back. This time she was not smooth. She was furious. She threatened legal action for defamation. Mara politely told her that sharing a factual summary of events she had personally witnessed was not defamation. Diane threatened to make her life difficult. Mara said, "Go ahead," and hung up again. Carter came to Mara's apartment. He knocked. She did not answer the door. He texted. She did not reply to the texts. He sent a long, anguished email explaining his side about the pressure, about the fear, about the impossible position he had been put in. She read every word. She did not respond. There was nothing to say. He had told her he didn't see another way. She had simply shown him that she did. Her family rallied around her completely. Her dad, the postal worker who had apparently embarrassed the Whitmore family by virtue of his career, showed up at her apartment with a casserole and a DVD of The Parent Trap. Not because it was relevant, just because she had loved that movie as a child. She ate casserole on her couch and cried with her parents and felt, for the first time in weeks, like herself again. And then June arrived, and Mara and Jade got on a plane to St. Lucia. 10 nights. Mara said it was the most healing, most beautiful, most freedom-soaked experience of her adult life. She and Jade drank cocktails on the beach at sunset. They got massages. They stayed up too late talking about everything and nothing. She said one night she went down to the beach alone at midnight and stood at the water's edge and cried for about 10 minutes for what she had lost, for the future that wouldn't happen, for the version of Carter she had fallen in love with, who apparently never quite existed the way she'd imagined him. And then The crying stopped, and she stood there in the warm night air, and she felt the strangest thing. She felt light, like something that had been pressing down on her for months, something she hadn't even fully identified while it was there, had simply lifted. She posted exactly one photo from the trip to her Instagram, just her, on the beach at sunset with a cocktail. No caption, no location tag, no explanation. Tion, Carter saw it within hours. She knows he saw it because he viewed her story and then went completely dark on all social media for 2 weeks. She had not expected that. She had not expected anything from him at all, but she noted it. When she came back from St. Lucia, the full picture of Carter's situation had come into focus through mutual friends and the grapevine. Carter had followed through on the ultimatum. He had cancelled the wedding. He had told his parents he would comply, and his parents had kept their word technically. He had remained at the firm. The trust conversation had been paused, not resolved, and the relationship between Carter and his parents, far from being repaired by his sacrifice, had taken on a new and ugly texture. Because here is the thing about parents like Gerald and Diane. They do not reward compliance. They interpret compliance as confirmation that they were right all along. And being right all along meant they were now empowered to have opinions about everything else. About how Carter ran his department, about his apartment, about a woman his mother had apparently identified as a more suitable match, about when he should be in the office, and what he should be wearing, and where he should spend the holidays. Carter had handed them a lever by proving the lever worked, and they were pulling it constantly. He had also, in the process of cancelling the wedding, lost 2 of his closest friends, the respect of several colleagues, and irreversibly the person who had loved him most completely. Mutual friends reported that he was not doing well, that he seemed hollowed out, that he had told at least one person he thought he had made a catastrophic mistake, that he couldn't stop thinking about Mara, that his parents were already pressuring him toward a woman named Victoria, whose family had the right kind of portfolio and the right kind of last name, that Carter had met Victoria once for coffee at his mother's insistence and came home and sat in his apartment in the dark for an hour afterward. He had played the game, he had won by his parents' metric, and he was absolutely miserable. Mara heard all of this. She felt something complicated when she did. Not satisfaction exactly, not cruelty, something closer to grief. Grief for the man he could have been if he had chosen differently. Grief for a relationship that was real, even if, and underneath all of that, very quietly, something that she could only honestly describe as relief. Relief that this had happened now, before the vows. Before she had legally bound herself to a man whose backbone collapsed the moment his inheritance was threatened. Let me close out Mara's story with this, because I want to be precise about what actually happened here. Mara did not win by fighting. She did not win by screaming or threatening or burning things down. She won by being completely, unflinchingly honest about what had happened. She told the truth, calmly, to the people who needed to know it. And then she took her honeymoon, and she went to the beach, and she let the ocean do the rest. Carter lost by making a choice he thought would protect him, and it protected nothing. His parents still don't respect him. His friends are gone. His fiancé is gone. And Victoria, whoever she is going to be another transaction in a life that has started to feel like a series of transactions. He bought his way into a life that has no warmth in it, and he paid for it with the only thing that had warmth. Mara. Is Mara okay? According to her last update, yes, she is. More than okay. She moved to a new apartment. She got a promotion at her dental practice to office manager. She started therapy, which she says was the best decision she ever made. She is not dating yet. She is not ready, but she is herself again. Fully, uncompromisingly herself. And that is enough. That is everything. Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. Carter, I hope the trust fund was worth it. I genuinely hope it was worth it, because I don't think it was. Now, after all of that emotional devastation, I think we have all earned a palate cleanser. So let's finish today's video with a petty revenge post that is going to make you punch the air. Mood booster. The parking space that broke Karen's spirit one, 34 female, moved into a new apartment complex about 2 years ago. It's a nice building. Mid-rise. Underground parking. Every resident gets one assigned space. Your space is numbered. It matches your unit. This is not complicated. This is basic apartment infrastructure. I cannot stress enough how simple this concept is. My assigned space is B14. It is mine. It has my unit number on it. There is a sign. There are painted numbers on the floor. It is, objectively, B14. Enter my neighbor from the unit across the hall. I will call her Karen. I know. But sometimes a Karen is actually just a Karen. This woman was in her mid-50s. She wore velour tracksuits. She had a small, furious little dog called Mr. Pickles. And she had decided, sometime before I moved in, that B14 was her space. Her space was B22, across the garage, slightly farther from the elevator. She had decided for reasons I never fully understood that she preferred B14, and so she parked there every single day. When I first moved in, I found her car in my space and politely knocked on her door and let her know. She looked at me like I had accused her of a federal crime. She said she had been parking there for years. I said I understood, but it was my assigned space and I needed her to move. She said, and I quote, "Well, it's never been an issue before." I blinked at that. I genuinely blinked. I said it was an issue now because I lived here and I needed my space. She moved her car that time, but she was furious about it. She made the kind of face that lets you know this is not over. And it was not over. The next morning, her car was back in B14. And the morning after that. And T. The morning after that. Every time I asked her to move, she moved. But she kept coming back, like a homing pigeon with a grudge. I filed a complaint with building management. They sent her a notice. She moved her car for 4 days. And then she was back. I started parking in her space. B22. Across the garage. Slightly farther from the elevator. My logic was simple. If she was going to take mine, I would take hers. We would simply swap. There would be no benefit gained. She came and knocked on my door, furious. She said I was parking in her space. I said I was aware. She said that was her assigned spot. I said I understood, but since she was in mine, I had to park somewhere. She sputtered. She actually sputtered. She said it wasn't the same thing. I asked her to explain how it wasn't the same thing. She could not explain it. She left. She then began a campaign of low-grade hostilities. She let Mr. Pickles relieve himself in the hallway directly outside my door. Twice. I know she did this deliberately because I saw her through the peephole. She also, and this one genuinely impressed me, with its pettiness rearranged the packages in the building mailroom, so mine were behind everyone else's. That is such a specific, peculiar act of aggression that I almost respected it, but I did not respect it. I formulated a plan. I had noticed something about Karen's car. It was a very nice car, a white Mercedes SUV. She was obviously very proud of it. She washed it every Saturday morning in the parking space in my parking space, with a bucket and a chamois and a level of devotion that bordered on spiritual. She talked about that car with the reverence most people reserve for children. Mr. Pickles and the Mercedes were clearly the twin pillars of her existence, and I knew the building had a rule about washing cars in the underground garage. It was in the lease. Something about drainage and water usage and liability. It was obscure. Most people didn't know it existed. I knew it existed because I am a person who reads leases. So on a Thursday 2 days before her Saturday car wash ritual, I forwarded the relevant lease clause to building management with a note explaining that a resident had been repeatedly washing their vehicle in the underground parking structure in violation of clause 14(c), and I wanted to flag this before the upcoming weekend. I included photos. I had several. I had been documenting for weeks. Management sent Karen an official notice on Friday afternoon, a formal written warning, with the clause number cited, stating that any further violations could result in loss of parking privileges. Karen came home to that notice on Friday evening. I know because I heard her through the wall. Mr. Pickles started barking and she said his name loudly several times, and then I heard what I can only describe as the sound of veloclad fury. She did not wash her car that Saturday. I watched through the parking garage camera on the building app residents have access, completely legitimate, and she came down, looked at the space, looked at the camera, and went back upstairs. Mr. Pickles did not get his usual post-wash walk in the garage either. That was not yet the petty revenge. That was just the opening move. The actual petty revenge was this. I reached out to the building manager separately and mentioned very casually, very helpfully, that since we were already reviewing the parking compliance issue, they might want to look at whether all residents were correctly using their assigned spaces as a general audit. Just for Building Order 1, offered no specifics. I was just a helpful civic-minded resident flagging a systems issue. The building manager sent a memo to all residents informing them of a parking compliance review. All residents were reminded that their assigned space was noted in their lease and that unauthorized use of other resident spaces could result in towing at the vehicle owner's expense. 2 days later, Karen's car was parked in B22. It has been in B22 every single day since, without exception. She does not acknowledge me in the hallway. She does not look at me. Mr. Pickles occasionally glances in my direction and then looks away, which feels symbolic. She has not put anything outside my door. She has not rearranged my packages. She has retired from the conflict entirely, completely, without a single word. I park in B14 every day, exactly as I always should have. The sign says B14, the floor says B14, and Karen's car is in B22, where it belongs. Harmony has been restored. Justice has been served. And I didn't raise my voice once. Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. That goes for entitled neighbors. That goes for controlling parents who weaponize their bank accounts against their adult children. Children's love lives. That goes for every Carter who chose an inheritance over a person who loved him completely. Thank you so much for watching today. If you made it this far, and you clearly did, I know you love these stories as much as I do. Hit that subscribe button right now if you haven't already. Save this video for later. Share it with someone who needs to hear Mara's story today. I'll see you in the next one.